This week, your candidates have been TikToking, Instagramming, blogging, singing, dancing, doing some very impressive Yoda impressions, and eating a whole McDonald's in one bite.
You guys have spent the week voting, and these guys have tried to convince you that you should vote for them.
Tonight, we found out who you have elected as your new executive officers for 2021 to 22. Good afternoon and welcome to LSUTV for a very special edition of the Soapbox. Now, in normal conditions, Soapbox would all be packed up by now until next year when the next load of candidates come in. But the current exec team are missing a vital member of the crew for the next year coming up, which means I have the very special pleasure of interviewing the candidates for a by-election today for Education's Officer. So let's see what's coming up on today's show. So we're going to take a look at what happened last time on Soapbox with all of the highlights for you. The current president and VP will fill us in on what they've been up to so far in their roles. We'll explain how the voting system works ahead of the by-election today. Our previous EO, Anna Maria, will catch us up on what the education officer does. And last but not least, we will be interviewing the next potential candidate. So it's my first time being an interviewer on Soapbox, but luckily I have got the pleasure of having Danny with me today. Danny, welcome back to the studio.
Thank
It's a bit
you.
weird being here out of term time, isn't it?
It is a little bit weird because, you know, obviously during term time there are students running around everywhere, especially here within the union. But now kind of it's still holidays technically. It is a lot quieter and a lot emptier.
Yeah, and I'm going to be very, very excited to have a lot of freshers coming in. And technically, second years are going to be having their freshers this year too.
True, it's been about a year and a half since we've had a proper full campus, you know, full activities from sports to societies and everything happening. So it will be so nice to see a whole range of new faces, 2 years almost worth of new faces.
Yeah, and nights out are going to be wild this year.
Can't wait.
So during this time, we haven't really had a by-election in the student exec elections. So if you're not aware of what a by-election is, let's take a look at what it actually is.
My name's Charlotte Style and I'm your LSU Vice President. So a by-election is where a role in the initial election failed to be filled, or in our case, the person who filled the role had to resign due to personal reasons. So now we're running a by-election to fill the vacant position. Basically, the education EO had to resign due to personal reasons. So we have to run this by-election to fill the role.
Could it have been avoided?
Unfortunately, the circumstances have happened and probably couldn't have been avoided. So we are now looking forward to a new person filling the role.
So why are we holding it now in summer, not in September or early in August?
So we're holding the by-elections now in the summer before uni starts again, because we have to run the election 4 weeks after it's been announced, and then we have to wait a certain amount of time before we can start votes and open. So we should have the new role filled by mid-September. We're not doing it later in the year because we need to fill the role as soon as possible so that the new officer can have all their inductions and be a part of the team.
As it was a really close original election, why aren't we just appointing the person who came second?
Unfortunately, that would be undemocratic as they didn't win the election. So we have to open it to new candidates, and they're more than welcome to run again if they wish to.
It's only a by-election. Why should I even bother voting?
The by-election is just as important to vote in as a normal election, as you're still electing someone to help run your education section for the rest of the year. So it is just as important to vote.
Has the team struggled in the last couple of months without an education year?
We haven't struggled as of yet too much because the students aren't back yet. So that the main role of the education year is to deal with education and students, peer support, and the university. And as of yet, it hasn't sort of kicked off with teaching yet. But it would be good to sort of have had them to be one with the team and start off the year as a whole team rather than sort of missing a few people. We're really looking forward to having a new person on the team and can't wait for the winner of the election to start the role.
Will the new post holders struggle in the role because they started a bit later?
Hopefully they won't struggle because I'm sure that Anna Maria, who is the old education, will give them a fantastic handover. And our whole team is so friendly and welcoming, and we can't wait to have the new person on our team.
So I've never been personally involved in a by-election before, but Danny, I want to ask you this question. Do you think that a by-election is more or less exciting?
Well, especially at an exec level, I think a by-election is more exciting because at an exec level, I mean, by-elections happen throughout the year all the time, but at an executive level, this is really rare. Last time this happened was 2018. So for the majority of the students here at the university, you know, we have never experienced this. So I think, personally, this is actually a bit more exciting than your normal exec election.
Yeah, and we're only doing Soapbox today for one officer that needs to be refilled. The Soapbox is actually a very daunting experience, or what can be perceived as a very daunting experience for a lot of candidates. So to catch you up on what Soapbox actually is, let's take a look at some highlights from just a couple of months ago.
So hi, I'm Jodie Evans and I'm rerunning to be this year's Action Chair.
My name is Hetty Borden and I am rerunning to be elected as your RAG Chair for 2021 to 22.
I'm Seth, I'm running for Society's Chair this year. Please vote for me, Nathan Chan.
Why do you think it is that people no longer want to be on a Society's committee?
So it's not wanting to be on a Society committee, I would say. I think a lot of people, they look at the role and they don't really know what it is.
In your manifesto, you said that you're the candidate of continuity for RAG and not necessarily the candidate for change. But so you're saying that actually RAG does need change and that you're the person who can bring it this year?
It needs change, yes.
So I totally agree with Cameron about collaboration. But what I wanted to do was to work with the welfare and social chair as well.
Hello and welcome back to the second day of the Soapbox debates for the 2021 executive elections.
I hope over the next 30 minutes or so you learn more about me and why I'm standing.
And I guess moving on to probably the most important that's affecting us all at the moment is the coronavirus. This wasn't on your manifesto at all.
Yeah, so I don't think it's worth wasting time in a manifesto. Obviously, we have very limited words.
So I don't think that's a drastic change, Josh. I think that's something that's been happening already. I mean, it's something I've been pushing for the past year.
They don't need to be moved anywhere. I think where they are is a very good place for them to be.
How would you work with the university to help solve this problem that you call systemic?
Unfortunately, because of a lack of power structures or long-term strategic vision, that the involvement with students can sometimes be tokenistic or performative.
My manifesto revolves around inclusivity and representation, where I will ensure every student is heard.
Experience and has really enabled me to gain a holistic insight into the education section.
Do you think LSU should have taken a different stance regarding tuition fees? And if so, what would it be?
I think the stance that we took or LSU took for tuition fees, there could have been a plan in place that would allow a reimbursement of some parts of the tuition fees.
First of all, I think one of the key parts of the vice president role is obviously line managing the sections.
I think it's with managing the section heads, it's really important to know about their sections and know what their committees are like and know what the problems are with that.
Do you know what DRC does? Do you know what the objectives are and the points are of DRC?
Yes. So if they put out a post or if they put out an action event where it's okay, so what do you want to see changed about the university?
The happenings of the union, such as even DRC, agendas or minutes of the meetings, for example, that are meant to be posted online. There's always been a lot of problems with this.
Well, there we go. It's the big one. It's the presidential debate here at LSU on the Soapbox.
My manifesto is based around maintaining both old and new traditions as we ease out of the pandemic.
With a new VC come new opportunities. With the introduction of a new Vice Chancellor at the university, it is very important for us to start off on the right foot.
So if you had to get rid of one role, one aspect of the role of president, to make space for more communication with the student in your role, what would it be and why?
I actually wouldn't remove any part of the presidential role. I've looked at what's been advertised, hence why I've gone for the role. I wouldn't want to remove anything, I'd want to just make it better.
I think representing the students should not be something that I need to prioritize, it should be something that I'm always doing. All of the work that the president needs to be doing should always be aimed at representing the students.
What does LSU mean to you?
Through the years experiencing many of the roles that I have experienced, it has meant something where I could grow as a professional, grow as an individual.
I think Loughborough and LSU are home, and LSU helps embody Loughborough to become the family it is. So that's all it means to me. It provides opportunities, it provides a family, it's home.
Well, that's it from the presidential Soapbox. That's it from the Soapbox this year, and that's it for 4 years of Soapbox from me.
And of course, if you want to get involved at any point today during the elections, you can tweet us at LSU Media with the hashtag LSU Elections. Now, Danny, last time that you were involved in the elections, you were actually interviewing the candidates post-Soapbox. What was that experience like?
That was honestly so much fun because you saw almost kind of the Soapbox almost jump-started the energy that they needed to get on with the rest of the week. You saw kind of the fire and the passion most of their eyes to be like, I really want to kind of get this role. Obviously, you know, some people, there was, some roles were contested, so some people didn't quite get it. But it was so nice, especially because this year's election, yes, was so different to any other election because it was all online. So it was so nice to see them so excited and eager to try out this new style of campaigning.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the candidates, as we are now aware, are now into their roles and have been since May. So let's take a look at what they've been up to since being elected back in May.
I'm Freya and I'm the LSU president for this year.
And I'm Charlotte Starr, your LSU vice president for this year. My first month has been good. It's sort of been finding my feet and figuring out all parts of my role and aspects of my role. Freshers planning has well and truly kicked off, so looking forward to getting into that.
It's been pretty good. The team's bonded really well. Everyone's getting on with it and is really excited to welcome the students in a month or so. I think getting the freshers and getting the campus back to normal. I think obviously last year we didn't have the campus as maybe it should have been. Everything was kind of locked down constantly throughout the year. So it'd be interesting to see if we get it back to how it was during my freshers year. I liked meeting everyone and I liked how it's such a campus feel, how you'd walk around and you'd recognise faces every day that you walk past every day.
I'm quite looking forward to planning exec elections actually. I think it's a big project and it can be done really well, so I'm excited to see where we can go with that. I think the biggest challenge will be continuing on the Loughborough family and the Loughborough sort of traditions that we've had in past years that haven't quite happened this year due to COVID, or last year due to COVID. So we're really going to be pushing on that this year, hopefully.
I think it's going to be bonding with the students in a new way. I think obviously they didn't really see their old exec because of the lockdowns and everything that was going on, so hopefully we can kind of relate to them and we can kind of be around for them and hopefully get them involved in the union as we want to.
I think you can expect hopefully good things. I'm going to try and keep a lot of Loughborough traditions and bring back stuff that didn't happen this year, so hopefully be seeing a lot more of that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm hoping to have a lot of fun with everyone, so should be good.
I don't know, hopefully a lot of fun, for me at least. I know there are going to be points where it's really stressful, but I'm really hoping to get a lot done. There are loads of things I really want to implement and some big things to do with mental health and sexual assault, but also just maintaining the university and union relationship, which is obviously so key to my role this year. Yeah, of course. That's obviously one of the best bits is welcoming people into the Loughborough family. So I'm quite excited to get them all here and introduce them to how we do it and what makes us so good.
It's such a good year to come to Loughborough because it's all back to normal. Like it's all going to be campus activities, union activities. It's going to be great. just get involved, meet as many people as you can, go along to everything. Even if you don't end up doing everything, just go along at the start and see who you meet, see what you can do. You won't regret anything.
Be ready to take on every opportunity that is handed to you. It gets so much better the more you get involved with, so definitely don't shy back from all of that.
So obviously we are very, very excited for these next candidates and now exec members to actually have a normal year in their roles aside from COVID. What do you think is going to go on this year?
I mean, I'm looking forward to all the events that we're going to put on in person mainly. I mean, I know RAG and Action have loads of events planned just during freshers, never mind the whole year. So I can't wait to actually be able to maybe go, whether that's to the alpaca farm to gardening, or whether with RAG it's Colour Dash or outdoor cinema or beer keller. I just can't wait to have events like those happening again in person. And as well, seeing all the societies and sports up and running again. Bucks is back finally, so we will be able to go out and compete and beat every university out there, hopefully, we hope.
Love that.
But it would just be so nice to see all the different areas within the union and just the university as a whole come back to, and also like in-person teaching. Like, it sounds weird, but I miss being taught in person in a lecture theatre.
Absolutely. Well, Danny, I'll be catching up with you a little bit later on, but we're actually going to now introduce our candidate. Now, we've only got one candidate that I am interviewing this afternoon, and that is Lizzie Watts. But first, we're going to see what actually the Educations Officer is, and for that, we're going to chat to Anna Maria.
Hi everybody, I'm Anna and I'm the current Education Executive Officer. Succinctly, the Education Executive Officer is the designated student representative on academic matters, and they do so by liaising with students and staff, both within the union and the university, to make sure that the student voice is heard, that feedback is captured, and that it is then discussed with the appropriate individuals. My favorite part of the role is working with volunteers. I think it's so good to see them really develop a passion and really hone in on those skills that they get throughout the year, and the overall empowerment that they feel when they succeed or when they overcome a challenge is just amazing. At core, the role is quite important because it has input into university and union matters. More often than not, the Education Executive Officer is actually the liaison between students and staff and ensures that practices are put in place. The overall idea is that the networking that the Education EO does throughout the year, both within the union and the university, is really important because it allows and facilitates activity to happen within learning communities.
Lovely. And now joining me in the studio, unfortunately she is virtual, but it's going to be a great chat nonetheless, is our next candidate, Lizzie Watts. Lizzie, how are you today?
Hi Rose, I'm doing really well, thank you.
Good. Hopefully you're not too nervous.
No, just the right amount, I think.
Absolutely, enough adrenaline to get you started. Now, we're going to start off, as with every other soapbox that we've done, with your 60-second opening statement. So whenever you're ready, take your time.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lizzie Watts, and I'm running to be your next Education Executive Officer. I've been at the university for 2 years now, and within that time, I've held several positions within LSU, from bar worker to VP of Debate Soc to course rep to now EDI rep. It was that final role that really made me understand my passion for the education section. So when this opportunity arose, I really couldn't say no. I've got big dreams for the section that are detailed in my manifesto, but to give a short overview, in the short term, I want to ensure a smooth transition into the new year, so carrying on the fantastic work of Anna Maria and working closely with the exec team. And then in the midterm, I want to ensure there are EDI reps within every single department, as well as looking at the feedback loop and how we can improve that. And then in the long term, I want to evaluate our course connections, so looking at the ethics of our course connections and also looking at the well-being structures in place for students, making sure we're creating well-rounded graduates.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Right, we'll start with the first question. As you just mentioned in your manifesto, you say that you've got 2 short-term goals: to work closely with the EO team and ensure a successful rollout of the improved peer mentor scheme. How would you say you would achieve these 2 goals?
Well, I think it's very important to recognise that this is a by-election rather than a normal election. So the exec team have already been in their roles for 4 months. They're going to have certain working patterns. They're going to know each other a lot better than I already know them. So I'm going to go in kind of on their terms to make sure that it's kind of a smooth transition from no person into having a person, you know.
Okay, and the improved peer mentor scheme, how do you see the peer mentor scheme looking in the future?
Well, I have heard that under Anna Maria there were already improvements being made to the scheme. I think it's slightly confidential, so I'm not entirely sure what those improvements have been, but I know that this peer mentor scheme is so integral to the education system. So as soon as I get into the role, or if I am successfully elected into the role, I'd like to have a look through those plans, see if I wish to improve anything or how I can aid it in being implemented, because I want it to be perfectly ready for freshers.
Okay, lovely. Now, you also say that you want to create a dedicated form of course feedback, which will be always available to students. Now, most students already don't fill in the feedback forms. I can't remember the last time I filled in a feedback form anyway. So what's the point of extending it year round?
Yeah. So that's exactly the reason that I wanted to change the way the feedback loop works slightly. So I feel like a lot of the course reps' work right now is just trying to engage students and making forms and sending them out on group chats, etc. But I'm envisioning a dedicated form on the Learn website that's always available. So whenever you're on Learn, it's going to be reminding you, because you can always see it. So at any point you might have some sort of feedback or any sort of improvement you might want to make, you can just click on there and enter it in. So there's not a dedicated time to be collecting feedback. So when an issue arises, you can mention it then and there, because I know personally there have been issues that I've had throughout the year, but when it comes to collecting feedback, I would have forgotten about it by then. But it's not been improved for the next year round because no one said anything about it. So having it open all year round, make sure that we're picking up on all the issues that could be picked up on. And then from that amount of feedback that we get, a course rep's job would then be to sift through the feedback, condense it, and then if they need any clarification on any points, they'd be able to contact the person that had put forward that point and then bring all that feedback, synthesize it, and give it to the SSLC meetings.
Okay, lovely. Now, the feedback forms is under the uni's control. So how do you think that you're going to actually achieve this?
So I think, as Anna Maria mentioned in that video previously, integral to this role is the networking with staff. And in my experience, staff have been absolutely excellent in taking on student feedback and any volunteers' feedback. So I think if we approach them in the right manner and said, this is going to increase engagement, this is going to improve student experience, then they will be more than happy to listen to our side and help us implement this.
Okay, but what if the university said no to that? What if they were going to put barriers up for that?
Well, if it wasn't able to be facilitated on the Learn page, then I would look at implementing it onto the LSU page instead.
Okay, lovely. Right, moving on. So Anna Maria has been Education EO for the last 2 years, and that has helped shape many of the changes that we have seen in the last couple of years. So what is one thing that you would have done differently to her, and what one thing you would change?
It's a difficult question. I'm not really aware of what exactly Anna Maria has had overseeing on. You know, there has been several changes, but you can't put all these changes down to just one individual. I personally think she's done a fantastic job in the role, and I'm kind of hoping to be led by her example in what I do, because I can't possibly expect to be better or know any better than a SAB officer that's been in the role for 2 whole years. It's just not going to be possible. So I don't think I would change anything that she'd done. I think I'm hoping to learn from what she's done if I am to enter into that transition period with her.
Okay, so in the last year, LSU Education has started to resort to appointments rather than democratic elections in the section due to a lack of engagement and continual by-elections. What will you do to ensure that we have a democratic union continue on?
Yeah, so I think it is unfortunate that we've had to resort to appointments because obviously we do want the democratic system to be upheld. So I think that's a matter of increasing engagement and increasing knowledge around the section, because there are so many little bits and bobs within the section that I think it can get confusing for some students. So I think an increase in signposting might help, but also an increase in events that are run by the Department Student Federation, for example, in particular. So not just having the halls lead on events, but also having department leads on events. And that way people are introduced to the structures in our departments more.
Okay, how else will you deal with the lack of engagement though?
I'm also wanting to kind of reward our volunteers slightly more. So I was thinking of doing an awards night or sort of a dinner sort of thing to help celebrate the achievements of our education volunteers. I do think one of the previous candidates mentioned that as well. I don't want to take complete credit for that. But I think rewarding hard work is such an important thing, and it's a lovely thing to do at the end of a year as well. I really enjoyed the Welfare and Diversity Awards because we are creating a community here, and it's important that people feel recognised for the hard work that they've put in. Okay,
but we do already have the LAA Awards. Do you think that you're going to add to that? Do you think that's not already good enough?
Yeah, they're an excellent starting point, but I'd like to make it a more formalised appointment. So perhaps like a ceremony and a dinner, maybe a ball. Ultimately, it's whatever the volunteers want. So I'd go out and survey them, see what kind of celebration event they would like. Having an award is amazing, but also being able to share that with your peers is even better.
Okay, lovely. Right, moving on, essay mills and copyright issues have become more prevalent issues in Loughborough for recent years, and you don't mention this in your manifesto. How do you plan to tackle this, and what methods would you support to prevent it?
Yeah, so I think that's an issue that goes back in its core to students not feeling supported initially. So if you're resorting to using essay mills or plagiarising, then something's gone wrong between you writing your essay and when that essay's been set. So if someone was doing that, I would envision them having a low period where they wouldn't be able to do their own research, because ultimately I think if someone's chosen to come to university, they are wanting to study that degree, they care about that degree, and you'd only resort to something like that if you were having a big downturn. So in order to stop that from even becoming a thought that crosses someone's mind, I want to make sure that we're looking after students' well-being 24/7 and making sure that if they are in a sticky situation, they feel like they can come to their course reps or whoever within the section or in any of the other sections to be able to air those concerns and nip it in the bud.
Right, okay. So on that point, actually, I want to talk about the fact that you're very, obviously, you sound you're very passionate about the student experience and well-being, which is a very, very important part when anybody comes to university. But, of course, that is also down to EDI reps, just to make sure that everybody in each hall is also having a good experience. However, many departments can barely find a chair, let alone 2 EDI reps. How will you achieve this in order to enhance the student experience?
Yes, so the EDI reps that I'm proposing, they aren't additional roles or additional students. They're an extra thing that a course rep would take on. So I was elected as the EDI rep because I was a course rep. So you're only choosing from that pool of people. And that just means that they have more of a focus on these, looking at these protected characteristics and how we can ensure the experience of these sorts of students can be improved.
Okay, lovely. Now, you sound like you've clearly worked with the university a great deal during your time at Loughborough. However, there is a fine balance between working in partnership for the betterment of the student experience and challenging the university. So how would you seek to achieve this balance, and that some would say that's not been met recently?
Yes, it's definitely a fine line to tread, and I think it takes experience and practice, but I would like to think that I do have some experience in that. Within the student staff mental wellbeing support liaison group, which is a big mouthful, that I set up, it was a challenge that I was working to kind of overcome, because on the one hand, I'm a student and I'm the one using the service, but on the other, I need to also champion my fellow students' views. We need to make sure that the relationship remains civil and not, you're not clashing with each other, you're respecting each other's points of views, but you've got to be strong enough in your own position that you can challenge respectfully some decisions. So it's about making sure that your partner sees you on equal footing, making sure that you're being absolutely clear in your demands and you've got a reasonable sort of list of demands. So I know sometimes in previous years I've been very what's the word? I dream big, basically. But that's exactly why I put those points in my manifesto under short-term, mid-term, long-term, because I like to take the point and smush it down into more manageable chunks. And then if you give that to someone else, they're more likely to be able to get on side.
Okay, so you clearly have the passion there, but also then it involves some teamwork. How would you work with Rachel Thompson then to make sure that these ideas go ahead?
Mm-hmm. So I'm under the impression that Rachel and Anna Maria had a really good working relationship. So I'm hoping to learn from Anna Maria how to sort of establish that with Rachel myself. But also I've had experience doing that with other university colleagues. So I think it's about respecting the other person's role, trying to understand exactly what it is that they do, and just being a good person to work with.
Absolutely. Now, so what do you mention is that you want to evaluate the ethics of the university's industry connections. Which specific industry connection are you referencing to?
So that's why I put it in my longer term, because I study politics, philosophy and economics. I'm in the policy department, so I don't know yet a lot about, say, the aeronautical school, but doing the research that I have done, I've seen that we've got connections to oil industries and we've got connections to I can't remember the name of it, but the ones that make fighter jets and stuff like that. So I don't want my politics to leak into my campaign too much, but I think it's something that we can all get behind, that we do need to make sure that the students are getting the best opportunities that they can do. And if that means transferring our connections into more renewable sources of energy or looking at different types of aviation, I think that's worthwhile looking at.
Would that become a detriment if we didn't have the links with these companies to the university?
That's the thing. We would want to transfer from one to the other. We wouldn't just want to pull back entirely, because obviously we want to make sure that our graduates have the best career prospects possible.
Okay, lovely. So you don't mention London in your manifesto. I wanted to have a talk about London because we always feel as if it's always missed off of many manifestos because we're based here in Loughborough. And education is the only permanent LSU presence in the capital, and this is quite surprising. So how will you represent these students and what will you do to improve the Loughborough-London experience?
Mm-hmm. So I think possibly having joint events would be a good way of going about it, because often I think a lot of our students and even our volunteers forget about London. So if we were to come together to have a joint event, that would enable us to kind of see their presence a little bit more. But also I'd quite like to look at getting a committee of sorts down on the London campus. So we'd have points of contact down in London who are on the ground experiencing that for themselves, because it's difficult to be able to understand someone's experience when you're not there yourself.
Do you think that London is being ignored by LSU?
Not on purpose.
Okay, lovely. So expand on that. Like, explain why. Why do you not think it's being ignored?
I think because, you know, we're constantly raising these questions of what more can we do for London. It's not like, oh, London's there, but who cares? You know, we do care that it's there, and the reason, like the fact that we're talking about it shows that. But there's only so much we can do from afar. So having a team down in London, having that connection point would mean we'd be able to do a lot more for them.
Okay, how do you think you want to work this out? What tangible things could you put in place?
So I'd have to work alongside the rest of the exec team for this, because this is much larger than just an education role. But getting representatives, so kind of mirror partners of ourselves down there, getting them to be elected by their peers would help that.
Okay, now going back on your point about students and their well-being and mental health, obviously we have to factor in London to this as well. Considering they're not in Loughborough, you're not going to have direct contact with a lot of students. So talking about mental health, you also want to hold them accountable for the mental health of students. How do you seek to achieve this?
So the Student Staff Mental Wellbeing Support Liaison Group was established for that exact reason. So it's looking at the systems that we currently have to support student wellbeing and looking at whether they're meeting the needs of students. So it was based off getting students experience from all different parts. So we had postgrad rep, mature student rep, undergrad rep, disabilities, ethnic minorities, and you can add London to that as well. It is in its early stages, so we didn't have all the positions filled that we wanted to, but I'd use my experience in creating that group in order to help improve the well-being.
Okay, lovely. So as you know, within education, there are various opportunities across 3 strands. We have academic representation, we have peer support, and the student-led department and school committees. In your opinion, which one needs the most support, and how do you plan to provide it?
I think that they are 3 prongs of the same fork. That's not a saying, but you know what I mean. If one lacks, the others falter as well. There's no way that you can prioritize one above the others because they all feed into each other. But something that I would like to see is the department, like the department committees having more of a presence within their said department. So I feel as though some department committees are slightly more active than others, not due to any fault of themselves. It's just due to whether they are able to engage their students or whether they feel like they're being supported by the main union. So that's a matter of going to the volunteers, asking what they need from us and being able to implement that.
Okay, lovely. Now we have had some activity over on Twitter, so I thought I would just ask one of the questions that someone has provided for us on social media. And the question has come through as, what are your reasons that you have for not running in the election just a couple of months ago?
I thought this might be asked. So I was thinking about it for a long time, and because ever since I really understood what the union was, I knew I wanted to go for a position within Exec, but I didn't know whether this year was the right year. I am taking a leave of absence from my course. This isn't a placement year for me. I'm between part A and part B, so that was something that was holding me back slightly. But having seen the work the team has done so far, having done more research into the role and seeing the passion, especially in Soapbox last time, it kind of lit something within myself. So when this opportunity came around again, I was like, I can't let it slip through my fingers a second time.
Well, luckily you don't have anybody running against you, so it's just me and you today, so you've definitely lucked in.
Wrong.
So I want to talk about some strikes for a minute. There is always the threat of strikes in higher education. We've seen it. I've seen it throughout my whole university experience, and it can be annoying at times when you can't directly contact the lecturers and people about your course. And this is something that you will likely have to respond to during your term. Do you agree that the LSU's historically neutral stance on strikes is the correct one for the Students' Union to take?
I think it is important for the union to remain neutral on those issues. No matter your personal politics, you've got to remember that you're representing a whole group of students. So you've got to understand that some students are going to agree with the strikes, some students aren't. it's important that you remain neutral in order to be a point of contact for both sides so that you're able to provide all the information needed. Every student is entitled to their own opinion on the matter, and they can go and support whichever side they believe needs their support. But as a student representative, you can't really take one side or the other because you're representing such a large amount of people.
But how are you going to deal with those strikes then when they do come on?
So it's about being able to provide information to whichever party needs it. But I also believe that we need to look at why the strikes might be happening. And if there's a better way of solving the issues, then we can work with staff and students to be able to do that.
Okay, lovely. So we have had another question in from Twitter. And the question is, how will you plan to work with the doctoral researcher president and the wider team?
So pretty much the same as I would work with any of our volunteers. I am intending on having regular meetings, making sure that they have all the resources and information that they need to fulfill their role. And if they need anything from me or the team in particular, I'm more than open to constructive criticism, suggestions, all of that.
Okay. Do you think the uni supports them enough? And how would you try to increase that support?
So I think they do some very important work, and in order to increase the support, I think we need to celebrate their achievements more. So again, it goes back to celebrating achievements of our volunteers and also making sure that they're heard.
Okay, lovely. So we know that we're coming to the end of this now, but I have got a couple of questions left. And one of them is regarding the pandemic that we've just had. As we do come out of the pandemic, some teaching and all exams will remain online for most courses until the foreseeable future. Do you think that this is the right approach for the uni to take?
In my experience, the university have been doing everything that they can in order to get us back in person. So at the start of the year 2020, when we were coming back to campus, we were putting down stickers in all of the lecture halls, making sure we could do socially distanced lectures. And I'm sure a lot of us are aware some lecturers put on 10 different of the same lecture just so students could come in person. And Loughborough really have been doing the most they can do in regards to the government guidelines. So ultimately, the buck stops with the government. We can't go beyond that, but we are trying our best to have that student experience that our students are paying for within the safety guidelines.
But the university don't currently have, they're not following the government guidelines at the moment in terms of, they're not forced to follow the rules at the moment for online learning. This is just a preference.
I can empathise with why they're doing it, because ultimately if we do introduce these mass lectures again, it could potentially spike another wave, and then, you know, we'd be shut down and have even less activity than we did before. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. It's about taking precautions and being sensible, finding that right balance. And ultimately, it's an unprecedented situation. We don't exactly get it right every time, but I think what we've seen so far have been fantastic from the university.
Do you think then that remote learning should just remain a constant here at the University of Loughborough?
I think it's an option that is very helpful for a lot of students. It's something that we kind of had a little bit of experience with lecture capture and stuff like that. Being able to have more flexible learning is definitely allowed it to be a lot more accessible for some students, but also not having it in person has reduced accessibility for others. So having that mixture, I think, is probably the best approach. But again, it's about surveying students, finding out what they need and want.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much, Izzy. Now, that is the end of all of my questions, but we're going to finish off with your 30-second closing statement. So take your time and take it away when you're ready.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for watching me on Soapbox this evening. I've been Lizzie Watts, running for Education Executive Officer. I'm really hoping that I made some good points on this, that you can get behind what I'm saying. But if you've got any questions, my social medias are Lizzie for Edu at Instagram and on Facebook. So shoot me any questions that you might have, and I'm more than happy to answer all of them.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Izzy, for joining me. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you in the rest of the elections. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much, Rosa.
Thank you. And over on LSUT, we thought we would do a little bit of a plug whilst we're here. So let's see what also LSU media get up to outside of elections.
This has been a great game.
Freya. Oh, it's beautiful.
He's gone for the line. He's over the line.
That's the goal with good save. And that is another try for Loughborough. That is another try for England.
Over on Freshers, LSU media will be there throughout. So let's see what we've got coming up. So on the 9th of October, the rugby is back and LSUTV will be broadcasting this for Loughborough Lightning against Worcester Warriors. If you're down, pop on down, and kickoff is at 2 o'clock and you can watch live on LSUTV. During Freshers, we will be around covering the move-in days, your first nights out at the Union, and all activities around campus. So come say hey and have a chat about LSU media if you are interested. And of course, if you do want to join, which I can thoroughly recommend, you can come and talk to us at the Freshers Bazaar away from all of the cameras. We have our Freshers page, which you can join, and a Discord chat to ask as many questions as you'd like. But most importantly, we will open you here with open arms. And back in the studio with me is Danny Brett. Danny, welcome back. What did you think of that then?
Well, first of all, I think you did amazing. Well done. You took over Josh Gray's baton very well there. So, but the overall interview, I think, went absolutely great for Lizzie because, you know, being on a Zoom call, as we all know for the past year, can be a bit, you know, you can't really see what's happening on the other side as much. You know, in the past, when people have been actually in the room, you know, you can feed off the other people in the room a lot easier. So when you're online, it's a lot tougher. But I think they did amazingly, and yeah, kudos to her and good luck for
absolutely. And of course, she is the only candidate that is running, but there is Ron. Now, if you don't know who Ron is, that is reopen nominations. So if you're not happy with any of the candidates today, you can vote for Ron, and that will take place for another by-election to get the EO place filled. But to actually understand what voting is and how you can vote, let's just have a look at a quick video.
So, what is STV? STV stands for Single Transferable Vote and is the voting system that the exec elections will be working under. Normally in elections you'd vote under a first-past-the-post system for an individual candidate by putting an X by their name. The exec election works on the STV system, so when you log into lsu.co.uk/exec elections, you will be presented with a list of candidates running for each role. You can rank as many or as few candidates as you wish. Under the first-past-the-post system, the candidate with the most votes wins, even if all the other candidates' votes combined are more than 50%. However, under STV, it all starts with a quota. The quota is 50% of the total votes cast plus 1. If no candidate reaches the quota in the first round, then the least popular candidate is eliminated, and their votes are redistributed based on their voters' second choices. This process will continue until the candidate reaches the quota and is elected. Although remember, RON, which stands for Reopen the Nominations, is also an option. And be sure to follow LSU Media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for all our exec elections coverage.
Amazing. And that has been Soapbox. But we're going to have a little bit of chat about media first because that's more important here. So, are you excited about media this coming year? Because, of course, I'm technically not a student anymore, but Danny is, and he'll be here in the media department. Are you excited for what's going to come up?
I can't wait because we've got like you already mentioned, with all the rugby coming up and all the sports just in general that we film, we have radio. We are obviously got loads of stuff. You and I both know very well how much radio, how great the radio is here. Plug. But then there's also Label, which is incredible, the amount of articles that we write for Label. And there's also Lens, our photography section, which is absolutely incredible. They come to so many of our events and take amazing photos, and we love it so much. So yeah, I honestly can't wait to see what media have for the rest of this year.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Danny, for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And that is the end of Soapbox, and that is the end of my only time that I'll be doing this, because it is very scary. But we did manage to get through it all. Voting opens tomorrow, and make sure that you do vote in this one if you are a student, and you can. But from that, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you very soon during Freshers. See you soon. Stay safe.